George Carlin said, think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. What real life example have you seen that validates this view? There is a considerable overlap between the intelligence of the smartest bears and the dumbest tourists. Yasa, my park ranger, on why it's hard to design a bear-proof garbage can. I genuinely thought that was about to be a Yogi Bear quote. I worked at a bank. Mobile depositing had just became a thing. We received a picture of someone's cash for deposit. Yay. See bro, just wait like 2 hours and take another photo of the same cash and deposit it again. And again and again. Whoa. Instant money, yeah bro. Instant money. Duck, we are gonna be so rich off this $84. A woman I used to work with who insisted that any animal could reproduce with any other animal. She believed that sperm from any animal was the same and that DNA was irrelevant. She believed this because she once saw some sickly, possibly deformed puppies and decided that they must have been half dog and half rat. Ah yes, rat terriers. The fact Florida had to tell people not to shoot at the hurricane. There were people in a diner, Turkey, that shot at the sun because it was too hot. One of my nieces had a cold as a toddler and was breathing through her mouth. My ex-Bill flipped out because he didn't want her to get carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing through her mouth instead of her nose, the normal way. When my daughter was born, we had to see the hospital pediatrician before we could switch to our usual one. We're in a tiny exam room and he's going over the DOS and owns 4 new parents. To precede this, he's an older southern man. And she will be sleeping in a crib in the nursery. We have a bayonet set up beside the bed to make night feeding easier. She can't sleep with you. She won't be in the bed. She has a bayonet beside the bed. If she sleeps in the same room, there will be too much carbon dioxide and she'll suffocate. That's what causes SIDS. Then I sent this exam room unsafe. We put in a complaint with the practice and the hospital. That's some ridiculously incorrect information to be spouting off at people, especially parents who take everything a doctor says as gospel. I can't even find the logic in that. I teach 6th grade. One time a parent came to me after trying to help their child with math homework and asked, what number is X worth? It feels like it changes with every problem. I don't know if this is satire or not, but good job. On 9/11, the general manager called his daughter who was attending ASU to wake her up and make sure she saw what was going on. The customer service manager said, it won't be on her TV yet. Arizona is 2 hours behind us. Why didn't Australia warn us about 9/11? After all, they are several hours ahead. I worked at Little Caesars and we were proofing the dough for pizza. My boss said at 7 PM that the dough needed to rise for 12 hours and took out her calculator to do the math. So I said that's gonna be 7 AM. Then she said the dough will expire in 48 hours and started doing the math again. I told her it would expire 2 days from now and she said that's kinda weird how that works out. I quit shortly after that. The most surprising thing here for me is that Little Caesars bakes fresh dough. Just scroll down a web page or Facebook feed and have a look at the ads. Things like only 2% can solve this puzzle, cheers like that. Those ads get posted so much because they actually work on a lot of people. My fav if those see what your fandom/whatever name is based on your date of birth/hometown/first and last letters of your mom's maiden name/etc. Things like you have a chart and people post their results and it's a gold mine for anyone looking for the answers to those pesky security questions. LMAO. I'm an insurance claims adjuster. If you truly knew how many stupid drivers you're sharing the road with, you'll never drive again. Edit, because I keep getting this question. I avoid driving whenever possible. I have a car, but I take the bus to / from work. I never drive at night. I work in highway safety, can confirm. I can no longer count on 2 hands the number of people I've stopped within the middle lane of traffic on a freeway with no bigger problem than a flat tire. When I question them as to why they stopped in the middle of a freeway, the typical answer is either the vehicle won't go any further or they don't want to damage their rim. I swear to whatever you want me to swear to, people will put the well-being of the rim on their car above their own safety and even the safety of their children. At the start of working from home due to COVID, I had a few users submit tickets for connectivity issues. These tickets got through to lines of support before landing in my queue. Turns out that the corporate Wi-Fi doesn't follow you home, and you need home internet in order to connect to the VPN. I recently spent 20 minutes on the phone with a board member trying to diagnose why his camera wasn't working for our online meetings. Funny thing, you have to actually have a camera in order for it to work. In grade 10, we had a science test and the teacher gave 1 point for putting a date on the paper and 1 point for your name on the paper. And then there were 98 points for the rest of the test. A guy sitting in front of me got 0.05, didn't write the date and only wrote his first name. That's fucking hilarious. Reminds me of the time my classmate copied the test answers of my other smarter classmate in 2nd grade. He got caught because he copied the name too. The woman that called into a radio station to complain about the deer crossing signs on a highway saying that the deer will see the sign and consider this place a safe place to cross the road. YouTube. National Parks and Services gets complaints from people when the buffalo aren't out. In the 80s, Aran W attempted to compete with McDonald's quarter pounder burger by selling a third pounder for the same price. The operation failed tremendously, with virtually no one buying the burger. When they surveyed customers for an explanation, the majority of customers responded that they didn't want to pay the same price for less meat. Their customers genuinely believed that 1/3 was less than 1/4 and refused to try the new A&W burger because of it. Edit. Obligatory duck everyone who says repmyinbox. I hate that cheese. I used to work at a burger Shake Shack type place. Oftentimes people would read the menu at all and just open with it like a cheeseburger and naturally would ask 1/4 or 1/3 pound. The amount/variety of people who just said whichever's bigger/smaller astounded me. Infantryman was told to trim the hedges, so he lifted the lawnmower. His buddy started it. As a brand new medic, I spent about 6 hours pulling finger meat from the hedges. Edit. Thanks for the award. Update. Sorry, I'm a derp and on a phone. For clarification, it was early 2004 after OIF 1 in the 82nd. I was a PFC with only a year and a half in service. We bandaged him, then used tourniquet, temporarily. Senior medics took him to the ER. I was field sanitation qualified, so I was left in charge of cleanup. 6 hours was excessive, but after we pulled most the meat and bone out, we had to hose down the hedges, the ground, the grass he bled in, the ground/floor outside and inside where he left a decent amount of blood had to be rinsed and sterilized. The mower had to be rinsed and cleaned. It had some damage from the drop. The private that started the mower had to be smoked by his NCO. We finished in about 4 hours of actual work with 2 hours of ducking off mixed in, cause the sham shield is a real deal. Holy cheese, that's dumb. Was at a party and someone's chisty old truck got stuck in some mud, so instead of sobering up and coming back the next day, he makes a Molotov cocktail with gas and throws it at the truck. The truck caught fire and was completely destroyed. Jason? Knew a kid who drank bleach to prove it won't kill you. A week later he showed up at school after taking a shot. He said he proved his point when the teacher asked why he was bragging about it. Mr. Hawk just said, but you cannot argue that without that medical treatment you'd have died, though you even said you have stomach damage and a burn esophagus yourself. This kid was bragging about that. He was not mentally disabled or otherwise. He was just that kind of idiot. Edit. Thank you all. I'd have thought my most upvoted comment would be about some kid I knew drinking literal bleach. RIP my inbox. I knew a girl in high school who wanted to breathe fire. She put lighter fluid in her mouth, and instead of blowing it onto a flame, she lit it on fire inside her mouth, and then tried to blow it out. She came to school the next day with a bandage over half her face. When I was in high school, we were reading a short story about what would have happened if the Japanese attacked us back with nuclear weapons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A girl in my class raised her hand and said something along the lines of, "Why does this matter? None of it is real anyway." The teacher had to ask her to clarify, but this girl thought WWII and the bombing of Japan were just from a movie and didn't actually happen. The best part is, the girl was half Japanese. Edit. Wow, thank you for all of the upvotes. I have a ton more stories about this girl, so maybe I'll post some on a different subreddit soon. Wow, her mind must have been blown when she found out WWII happened. Myself, looking for my phone when it was in my hand all the time, then answering a call and continuing looking for it during the call. Edit. Thanks for the award and using English must suck sometimes. Me, on a call with my mom, getting ready to leave the house, but spending 20 minutes freaking out that I can't find my phone. My mom, asking if I checked my purse. A former coworker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, "Do you mean a bachelor's degree?" She insisted it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. Then she led me back to her office and pointed at her diploma to the word baccalaureate and said, "See, bachelorette." I had a coworker, really sweet girl, but dumb as chiz, tell me she smoked American spirits because they were non-addictive. See, as she showed me the box. Oh, honey, no. That says no additives. Such a sweet, stupid girl. She was a good server, at least. You know the reason you bury a rattlesnake after you kill it is because bees will eat it. Then bees can't sting people with rattlesnake venom. Guy I heard constantly trying to pick up women on public transit. That sounds like a sick superpower though. I once got into an argument with someone over my own name. There are two pronunciations, German and English, and they just couldn't accept the fact that I use the English pronunciation despite the fact that we were speaking English, and it's what I've used my whole life. But nope, I was lying to mess with them. I've got two little girls who were born 15 months apart. They look pretty similar, and we get asked if they are twins pretty often. Even though one is quite a bit taller, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were fraternal twins. But yeah, I once got into an argument with somebody over whether my daughters are twins or not. It wasn't until I pointed out that I was literally there watching them being birthed that they finally conceded. The people who believe 5G is responsible for spreading the virus. Seriously, I don't understand how electromagnetic signals could possibly distribute a biologically impactful virus. Seriously, there's a new low every month/year. As I understand that whole conspiracy theory, at least the start of it, nobody thought 5G spread coronavirus. They thought 5G was actually killing tens of thousands in its own way, and the coronavirus was an attempt at a cover-up. Coronavirus was either completely fabricated, or a fairly harmless new virus they used to carry the blame. That people act surprised at the total death count going up. It's always going to go up. If it was going down, that's an entirely different pandemic altogether. Lol. I hope the zombies follow social distancing. People that cut holes in their masks because it's easier to breathe. I've seen countless people here on the news wearing the masks in such a way that only their mouths were covered. Their noses are completely exposed. You might as well not be wearing a mask at all if you use them like that. Customers arguing that their tattoo is backwards, while their artist tries to explain that no, your tattoo is fine, it just looks backwards, because that's how mirrors work. Just imagine what tattoos those people have gotten. I worked with a lady who was remarking on how a friend of hers had lost a bunch of weight. She pondered, I wonder how many Diet Cokes she had to drink to do that. Edit. Same lady was convinced beyond repair that when you sneeze, the air only comes out of your nose. There was no convincing her otherwise. Man, this made me a little sad. People are so susceptible to marketing these days that they think just because something is called diet it must be good for them. Reminds me of my flatmate from uni who used to drink smart water before taking exams. Every time I put on my glasses so I can see better while looking for my glasses, using the flashlight on your phone to find your phone in the dark. The flat earther that tried to launch himself into docking space and died. His name was Mikus. It wasn't his first homemade rocket that he piloted. Here's an article about his death, if anyone wants a read. Interestingly, after his death, his PR rep said he wasn't really a flat earther, but only said that he was to get extra publicity. This helped raise funds for the rockets as they were largely funded through crowdsourcing. About half the calls I take on a daily basis, people call 911 to ask whether Walmart is open. to report that they didn't get enough mayo on their burger, to complain that cleanup at a fatality wreck is taking too long. All sorts of silly, out of touch chiz. Granted, there is probably some level of mental illness and/or substance abuse present in those calls. But still, sounds like this can be an entire AskReddit thread itself. I once offered a girl a tuna sandwich and made a comment about the tuna being dolphin friendly. She then said I thought tuna fish came from dolphins. I guess she at some point she heard that if you love dolphins you shouldn't eat tuna and thought tuna is what we call dolphin meat, like we call pig meat pork or cow meat beef. Apostrophe. On the Man show they set up a booth on some pier, I think Santa Monica, and were getting women to sign up to end women's suffrage. Tons of women were signing. Obviously being the Man show this was a joke on women, but the reality is the amount of people in general who do not know suffrage is the right to vote, and not some sort of suffering is far too high. I feel that this could be put on a ballot, complete with social media campaigning, and women would lose the right to vote by a large margin. American voters were surveyed as to which they liked better, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, ACA. The ACA had drastically higher support. They are the same ducking thing. TBF, if I received a survey asking me to compare the two, I'd they were different, even if I previously believed they were the same. I worked in retail for a few years, and it taught me that many people are either incapable or unwilling to read. I have had people walk up to me to ask me how much something is, only for the price tag to be featured prominently on the item. It's $9.99, ma'am. How did you know? It says so on the price tag, ma'am. The number of people who don't read menus at restaurants. It hurts me. Edit, spelling, because I think faster than my fingers can type. I used to manage a retail store that sold teen clothing, so as expected, I primarily had teens working for me. One employee came to the back room while I was on break and asked what I was eating. Somehow the topic turned to how I should brought chicken for lunch because she wanted chicken. I told her I was vegetarian and therefore don't eat meat. She tells me chicken is not meat. It's poultry and vegetarians can eat poultry. She said at the grocery store the aisles list meat and poultry separately so they're obviously different. We argued for a couple of minutes before I finally told her to go back to the sales floor. She didn't last at the job long, but damn. Wait, you should brought chicken because she wanted some, mom. I was doing a covered decan of a medical supply warehouse that had a confirmed positive employee not too long ago, and while my team was inside doing our thing, the floor/shift manager was following us around without a mask or gloves or really any of the proper PPE except for a high-vis vest and steel toe boots. I had to tell her to leave the room. I was fogging with Viricide. Edit. Meanwhile, we were wearing full level C hazmat suits with P100 combo cartridge respirators and all seams taped up. We were wearing full level C hazmat suits with P100 combo cartridge respirators and all seams taped up. Should I be wearing this jet up too? Or is my mask and chisty gloves good enough to handle a small town's groceries? Because that's my job. Friend of mine showered in cold water for a year cause he never thought of turning the other tap to see what it would do. That's the dumbest thing I've read in this thread so far. One of my closest friends, really good guy but well, in learning Spanish, and I once told him I was reading this Don Quixote book. I complained about how difficult it was because it was written in 1605, and he said wait, Spanish existed back then. That's more ignorance than dumbness, although pretty high tier ignorance. I had a bald man return a hairdryer because it burnt his head. He was doing something else with the hairdryer. Groups of people leaving their house to block the roads to a hospital because they are upset that they can't leave their house. Groups of people outside the gym exercising on the street to protest that they can't exercise in the gym. When farms have trouble producing their crops and you ask some dipchers if that worries them, I don't get my food from a farm. I get it from Walmart. The distance that many people have from where their food comes from is shocking. That trick where you call water by a scary chemical name like dihydrogen monoxide so that people will want to regulate or ban it. My local pool contains high quantities of a chemical used in industrial cleaning solutions and is used to cool nuclear reactors. Think of the children. I used to work for a chatbot app. Our app would text our users every morning with a greeting in a different language. Hola, bonjour, etc. One day we got blown up by a user saying their account was hacked. She said, "My name is Kim Smith, not Kim Konnichiwa. Someone's hacked my account." When we explained that our service has been clearly saying hello to her in other languages every day, and that konnichiwa is hello in Japanese and her account was fine, she went on a racist rant and said Disney was behind the destruction of America. Yep, I think I'm not the only one who wants details here. Pretty please. People who think Arabic numerals shouldn't be taught in schools. Yeah, Roman numbers are very practical to use in equations. High school. History. Topic. Titanic. So the iceberg was about the size of a, yes maze. D // / / don't icebergs fall out of the sky. To this day I picture a iceberg the size of a small island falling from the sky being seen for hundreds of miles away like a duck in Meteor. My brain hurts. My dad is a pesticide investigator for the state and heard this on a complaint. I set out all these bird feeders and bad baths, but not one bird comes to my yard. I bet it is all those pesticides that crop duster is laying down in the field. Local school board member, as they were standing in her 5-acre yard with 20 or more cats running around. So many people are blind to the effects that outdoor cats have on birds. And even when you try to tell them, they get pissed off and say you're exaggerating, that their cute buddy could never be so dangerous or detrimental. I just finished tutoring to Intro to CAMPC courses. Lesson 1 in about defining variables. Naturally, there's people that didn't know how to do that by the final. People learn at different rates. I get that, but how did you not learn lesson 1 after 15 weeks, 20 homework assignments, 7 quizzes, and 2 previous exams? I have met people in college unable to read at a child's level. I was tutoring some kids and was shocked as hell. I could not figure out how they had the marks to get into the school in the first place. Turns out they didn't get in based on their own merit. Really pissed me off and opened my eyes. The kids I helped were good kids, but they should be able to read better than my elementary school aged child, which of course they definitely could not. The average voter. Churchill said it best, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. Churchill really said everything there was to be said, didn't he? Deleted. Redditor leaves house, where's my circle, a jerk? Getting a misdialed call from a random person who gets mad at you because you're not the one he/she was looking for. Happens with me several times a year. I kept getting voicemails from some dude I didn't know, really angry. She's like yelling at an ex or something. First time I actually answered, I told him wrong number. Several voicemails later, and I answered again and said, "I've told you this is the wrong number. You need to stop calling me." His response was, "You need to stop telling me what to do." I had a friend once who truly believed that magicians like Chris Angel and David Blaine had some kind of magical power or telekinesis, something along those lines. While watching one of those magicians on TV performing on the street, he argued, how could this be fake? Look at all those people. Can't fake all that. Has to be some kind of power or magic. I would then have to ask, do you realize that movies are fake? They fake entire universes, planets, cities, war, etc. He didn't get what I was getting at. Right, I know it's fake, but I do enjoy trying to figure out how they did it. Also, it's just cool as chiz what they can come up with, especially in live performances. Worked at a larger grocery chain whose deli used scales that would show you digitally the weight, so 1.5 pounds would show 150 pounds on the scale etc. The person I worked, 35 years, had to ask me to come over and tell her how much she had sliced every time she iced someone for over 4 months. She had passed the written and verbal test they give to verify that you should be able to do this. She didn't seem to have problems reading any other signs or numbers, so I don't think dyslexia played a part, but man, it was so frustrating trying to do my job and hers. Along the same line, my previous employer used a 100-minute clock for the time clock. This meant if you arrived in time, your punch would read 8:50. The manager of the department egged timekeeping to another person because he knew he didn't understand it. After several weeks of everyone punching in at 8:50, we all got called in for it. First of all, we were all salaried, except one person, so the time didn't really matter in terms of the law. But it kept the peace, so no one complained. We all got ripped up one side and down the other, and no one was allowed to speak. Not that any of them tried, except me. When the manager and the timekeeper finally shut up, I pointed out that the clock runs on 100 minutes, not 60, so therefore we were all on time, or early. They stood dumbfounded when they looked at the clock and it literally showed an analog clock with 100 minutes. So then I took it further to point out that as salaried employees, none of this matters, and that none of us ever left for much, giving them 9 hours instead of 8. And that they walk in at 8:30 and we are already there, so how could we really be arriving at 8:50? They understood and removed the stipulation that salaried employees need to use a time clock. I work in it. I once had a lady call me from home because she couldn't get connected to her VPN. I asked her if she was connected to her home wireless network. She replied saying that she did not have home wireless. I then asked how she was connecting to the internet. Her reply was, "I'm using the cell tower. I can see it from my house." While this is technically possible with a hotspot or cellular card in your PC, this isn't what she meant. She thought she could get internet service via Wi-Fi from the cell tower. I work at a restaurant. We were low on tomatoes for our tomato soup, so one person grabbed potatoes to see if we could use those instead. Well, don't keep us waiting. Could you? I'm a physician. I doctor specifically. I will tell you that the longer I work, now 15 years, my standard for the average person continues to decline. Case in point, thanks to the awful information filtering out there, I had a patient just last week who read that vitamin D helps you resist a coronavirus infection. Well, he had also read that you can get more vitamin D by getting more sun. So he wanted to collect as much light as possible with his eyes. As a result, he stared at the sun for a solid 60 seconds and burned holes directly into his retinas, permanently reducing his vision with no chance at future improvement. This is awful, but it is also hilarious. I'm sorry if you had to explain to this person what they had done. Deleted. Well, she wasn't wrong. People protesting their rights were taken away because they have to stay at home during a pandemic to save lives, simultaneously citing that their predecessors fought in WW2 for their freedom, ignoring that drafted people had their rights taken away to fight in a war, which seems a lot tougher than sitting in the Xraden. Don't forget, for Vietnam there was also a draft. Can I get a medium pizza? We actually only have large. Oh okay, let me get a small then. We only sell large pizzas. Oh, I see now. I'll go ahead and get the medium then. Edit. Our large is the smallest we have. We have large, extra large, and 26 inches. We call it large for marketing purposes. Edit 2. A lot of comments here are further proving the whole question of this post. New York style pizza is huge by nature. It's not a large pizza if it's the only kind. I just had a customer yell at me for putting their eggs in a separate bag, saying they don't want all those bags and the paper ones always rip, before putting it in the bag and throwing a pound of flour on top. It was somewhat satisfying seeing their faces. We heard the cracks until I realized I'm the one who needed to clean it up. Oh, also she complained that we hadn't warned her about the fragility of eggs. I had a lady scold me because I placed a bag of potato chips on top of her egg carton. Guess she didn't notice that the egg cartons in the cooler were stacked about 6 high. I once owned a smart car and some stranger approached me at a gas station about why I didn't have a slow vehicle sign in the back of it, since all moped cars must have that. I tried explaining that it was a real car, just a bit smaller, but he didn't take it. According to him, I was driving illegally and he was surprised the police hadn't stopped me yet on the highway. My family has 2 electric cars and the sheer number of people who ask yes, but where do you put the gas? After explaining that it runs on batteries is staggering. I think it's because they are still thinking hybrid car rather than all electric car, but even after a very thorough explanation they often still go back to where's the gas go? The people burning down 5G towers to prevent COVID-19. Our town was live streaming a holiday parade in case you were not able to make it out in person. This included a live chat feature as well. One mother who lives nearby wrote into the chat that her daughter didn't get outside in time and asked for them to turn around and come back to her street. That's less dumb and more entitled. The amount of people that seemingly failed / skipped / didn't pay attention to high school science / biology / chemistry class. I took my very first chemistry class when I was in the Navy, aged 22. We were learning a bunch of chemical formulas, but the instructors assumed that we would know that they function as equations. For the first few weeks I was memorizing them by rote. One day I was like, huh, look at that. There's the same number of O's on the left as on the right. Then I noticed the H's were the same way, and then I laughed to keep from crying. The comments section of any website, especially YouTube. When my mum unironically claimed that the moon landing was fake because the moon was like 40 times the size of Earth. How that proves it was fake I don't know. Hate to think she raised me lol. What I always wondered was, where do these people get their info from? Like, do they just make it up on the spot? Old boss had a morning routine of walking around the office with a bucket. He was watering all of the plastic flowers. Okay, I have been unfortunately guilty of this one time. A new girl started at work and she sat across from me, so we shared some desk space in the corner. She put these flowers there with a special vase that made it look like real water in the bottom. As a nice gesture I watered them for her before one weekend. She got a huge kick out of it and we laughed about it all the time. Had someone argue with me because they were sure that the cavemen were before the dinosaurs and that it is impossible that dinosaurs even existed. She considers mammoth and sabertooth to be dinosaur. Sounds like someone's been watching Ice Age instead of studying. I used to teach university students. The kids were 20 to 21 years old and in the second year of either molecular biology, biochemistry, or microbiology. When I handed back assignments I told them that they were alphabetized by last name. Every week 90% of them would flip through the stack one by one, whether their name was Atkins or Zanzibar. They didn't listen. They didn't learn. I have to say as a university student, after about the 5th person to go through those the order becomes all messed up. My last name starts with an S and half the time it would be in a different place in the stack because people look for this and just shove the stack of papers back together in a different order. When I was a sophomore in high school, a classmate asked to borrow a pen and I lent him one of mine that had the Eiffel Tower on it. He asked where the building was from and I said Paris. He gave me a confused look and asked where Paris was. Was it further away than Chicago? Now it was my turn to be confused. We were in high school. How the hell did he not know Paris was in France? But whatever, maybe he's not the brightest. So I inform him that Paris is in France. But he still looks utterly confused. I assume he misheard me, so I started explaining it. France, you know, like France. From history class, World War II, Napoleon. That France. He said he was bad at history and had never heard of France before. He then asked me if it was another state or was it like a region of our state. Utterly baffled at this point, I tried to explain that it was another country entirely and it was in Europe. Exasperated, I remember saying, you know, Europe, that other continent? He still looked confused, so I added the land across the ocean. Finally, there is recognition on his face. He tells me he heard of oceans before. He thinks he understands now. I remind you that this encounter with a student who didn't know what Europe was took place in high school. Teacher here. Kids like that are proof that try as hard as we can to lead people to the well of knowledge, we can't force them to drink. I had a 16-year-old new start ask me at work, was the world black and white before they invented color TVs? Nice guy, dumb as a rock. I thought that when I was 5. Some dastard in a mirror. Ducker has been following me for years. I'm back. Every time someone says, we just need let the virus burn through the population, It only really affects like 3% of people. It's astonishing how little people understand basic statistics. Or just have the vaguest idea what 3% of 7 billion is. Or even what 3% of their own community dying from a disease looks like. Fine, it'll spell out for you. Suppose you live in a rural county of 175,000 people. You all come into town for the county fair on Saturday, then church on Sunday. Some of you get exposed to the virus by a traveling preacher standing at the entry to the fairgrounds hollering about the evils of Satan, premarital sex, and small European hatchbacks. Same preacher gives a guest homily in church the next day to expose the rest of you. Over the next 3 to 6 months your small 30-bed county hospital needs to handle about 10,000 to 15,000 really sick people, still less than 10% of your whole county. And for that magical only 3% to round out of the very sick, in that overcapacity treatment center, nearly 6,000 of your family, friends, and neighbors die there. A man I worked with, 23 to 25 years old, was absolutely positive that the TechRax video where he drills a hole in an iPhone 7 or 8, whichever was the first without a 3.5mm jack, to make the headphone jack, was 100% real, and they did it to hide it from customers, and this was a hack to find it. I'm a techie. I built another person's computer, and he argued with me for 25 to 45 minutes about this. I pulled up diagrams, explained he was drilling into the battery, and even named TechRax. When he couldn't name the video maker, he saw it on Instagram, and I knew his entire channel was ruining tech. I showed him, and I told him, if he could do it, I'd pay for the iPhone in full if it works, and he was literally shopping around for it, when another one of my coworkers who was watching this argument and siding with this man despite him knowing I made techie and trusting me to build his $2,000 PC said, oh, my brother just got that phone and they called him, and he said nah, that's fake, and that was it. They believed him. I showed them schematics and breakdowns of the phone and that wasn't enough. But now it's fake was. This man also had to get a ride home when his car steering wheel wouldn't move because it was locked, as most cars do, and he played with it for an hour and was unable to unlock his wheel. He's a ducking mouth breather. Edit. One word to explain: it's a steering wheel, not a tire. At a work Christmas party in a Mexican restaurant, an Irish colleague was trying to argue the pronunciation of jalapenos with the Mexican waitress was jalapenos. He wasn't joking, and got so upset with her taking the piss out of him that he made a scene and we almost got thrown out. The same happened to a Mexican friend that ordered some guacamole in France. Waiter kept trying to teach him to pronounce it the right way. The Georgia senator that wanted to prevent sending troops to an island because he was worried it would capsize. Agreed. U.S. Rep. Hank Johnson, GA04. Member of the U.S. House. Video link. The island was Guam. Video link. Georgians get a great return on his 6-figure salary. Presidential candidate Marianne Williamson claiming in 2019 that the power of the mind could divert Hurricane Dorian from a direct impact with North and South Carolina. USATODAY. Those that persist in believing that climate change is a Chinese hoax. I had an instructor who wholeheartedly believes that climate change is a hoax perpetuated by the refrigerants industry in order to get people to replace older, less expensive refrigerants and machines with newer, more expensive ones. Here is an article about a woman who tore a hole in her face mask cause she couldn't breathe. Daily News. A girl in one of my college classes argued that heart transplants shouldn't be allowed because that's where the feelings are, and the person receiving the heart wouldn't be the same person anymore. That's actually pretty funny if it wasn't so sad. I mean, it's obviously fake if one thinks about it, but I could see someone taking just the right clues to make it that far without knowing the truth simply because it never came up. The people that bought all the toilet paper, leaving us normal people ducked in regards to how to wipe our ease. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's ducking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.